We live in a world addicted to noise. Everywhere you look, people are trying to prove themselves. They prove they're right, prove they're worthy, prove they belong. They argue online with strangers, write long messages that go unanswered, and pour out their hearts in search of validation. But the truth? The louder the world gets, the less it listens. And the more we explain ourselves, the more we give away our power. Think about it. How many times have you chased someone's attention, only to feel smaller afterward? How many times have you begged to be heard, only to realize they never wanted to understand you? How many times have you explained yourself to people who had already decided not to see you clearly? That isn't strength. That isn't love. That's prison. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They understood something most people today have forgotten. Silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. Silence is respect, not for others, but for yourself. Imagine this. Someone disrespects you, ignores you, walks away. Most people rush to respond, to call, to text, to explain. But the Stoic? He does something different. He stays silent. Not because he doesn't care, but because he values his dignity too much to give it away. And in that silence, something powerful happens. You reclaim control. You show that your peace is not up for negotiation. You let your absence speak louder than any message you could ever send. So let me ask you this. What if silence could say more than words ever could? What if restraint was the ultimate strength? What if the quietest voice in the room was the one that carried the most power? This is the wisdom of Stoicism. This is the discipline of silence. And if you've ever felt misunderstood, ignored, or disrespected, this message is for you. Because tonight, we're going to uncover why silence, your silence, is not emptiness, but your greatest superpower. The world we live in rewards noise. It tells you to speak louder, explain yourself faster, defend your worth at every turn. If someone misunderstands you, prove them wrong. If someone ignores you, chase them harder. If someone rejects you, beg for another chance. This is the cycle modern life traps us in. Chasing, begging, explaining, endlessly trying to convince people of something they were never willing to see in the first place. But here's the brutal truth. The more you chase, the more they run. The more you beg, the less they respect you. The more you explain, the less your words matter. It feels like strength in the moment, typing out that long message, making that desperate call, posting that angry reply. But in reality, it's weakness disguised as courage. You're not protecting your dignity. You're handing it away piece by piece. And why do we do it? Because the world has trained us to believe silence is failure. That if we don't fight back, we lose. That if we don't explain, we'll never be understood. That if we don't beg, we'll be forgotten. But what if the opposite is true? What if silence is the thing that sets you free? What if it's not about making noise, but about mastering restraint? The Stoics lived in a world no quieter than ours. They faced betrayal, misunderstanding, and disrespect, but they discovered a different path. Instead of being dragged into the noise, they chose stillness. Instead of explaining, they accepted. Instead of chasing, they let go. And that's where the shift happens. Because when you stop giving people the reaction they expect, you take back control. Your silence makes them uncomfortable. It forces them to face themselves. And most importantly, it protects your peace, the one thing you should never surrender. The problem isn't that life is noisy. The problem is that most of us forget we don't have to join the noise. And once you realize that, silence transforms from something passive into something powerful. Silence is not emptiness. It is strength under control. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, men who lived through betrayal, war, exile, and loss. Yet through it all, they discovered something profound. The more you value things outside your control, the less control you have. When you chase someone's attention, you give them power. When you beg for their understanding, you hand them your peace. When you explain yourself endlessly, you place your dignity in their hands. But silence is different. Silence is when you take that power back. Think of Epictetus, born a slave, yet he rose to become one of the wisest teachers of philosophy. His chains could restrain his body, but not his mind. Why? Because he mastered restraint. He mastered what could not be taken from him, his response. His silence was not submission, it was self-control. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote in his Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That is the foundation of silence. It is the refusal to give away your peace to things beyond your control. Most people believe silence means defeat. The Stoics saw it as discipline. They didn't stay quiet because they didn't care. They stayed quiet because they knew their worth wasn't up for debate. And this is what makes silence so powerful. It is not an absence. It is a choice. It is you saying, I will not waste my life explaining myself to those who cannot hear me. The world will demand your reaction, but you are not obligated to give it. And when you master that truth, your silence becomes your shield, your dignity, and your superpower. Have you ever noticed something strange? When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop chasing, when you stop filling the silence with words, suddenly people notice your absence more than they ever noticed your presence. That's the paradox of silence. It doesn't push, it pulls. When someone hurts you, your instinct screams, say something, fight back, defend yourself. You feel the urge to write that long message, to explain your side, to prove your worth. But here's the truth. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you chase, the further they run. The more you explain, the less your words are valued. But when you go silent, everything shifts. Suddenly, they're the ones left wondering. They replay the last moment in their heads. They think about what they said, how they acted, and why you haven't reacted. Elbert Hubbard once wrote, "He who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words." Silence holds up a mirror. It forces others to confront their own actions. When you withdraw instead of react, you send a message that no amount of shouting could ever deliver. I value myself too much to explain myself to you. And that kind of silence doesn't come from ego, it comes from clarity. Because here's the reality. If they cared, they would ask. If they respected you, they would reach out. If they valued you, they wouldn't need a paragraph to understand your worth. So instead of chasing their understanding, you choose stillness. Instead of forcing your words into ears that won't hear, you let your absence do the talking. And in that absence, something powerful happens. You reclaim the energy you once wasted. You stop trying to heal through conversations with people who were never listening in the first place. You stop bleeding your soul into spaces that were never capable of holding it. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Your silence will confuse them. It may even trigger them. They'll ask themselves, why didn't he react? Why didn't she respond? Did they stop caring? That's when the power shifts. Because now, they are the ones chasing answers. And you? You've already moved on. Silence doesn't just protect your peace. It makes your absence echo louder than your words ever could. The world is loud. Opinions, arguments, endless voices, all telling you what to think, what to feel, how to react. And in the middle of that noise, it's easy to forget the one voice that matters most, your own. Silence is where you hear the truth louder. Not the world's truth, your truth. Most people, when hurt or confused, run to noise. They call 5 friends, scroll for advice, or chase answers from the very person who broke them. They believe if they can just have the right conversation, if they can just hear the right words, everything will make sense. But the Stoic takes a different path. He goes silent, not because he doesn't feel pain, but because he knows pain cannot be solved with more noise. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's the gift of silence. When you step away from the noise, your mind begins to settle. And when the mind settles, truth rises. In that stillness, you begin to hear the real story. They didn't respect me. I just didn't want to accept it. I'm not angry they left. I'm angry I stayed too long. I don't need closure from them. I need peace within myself. These truths don't arrive in arguments or text threads. They come in the quiet hours, when you stop speaking and start listening. Silence separates emotions from values. When you're hurt, your emotions scream. Chase them. Prove yourself. Don't let them win. But in silence, your values whisper, hold your dignity. Protect your peace. Let them go. That's why the Stoics paused before responding. They didn't let anger decide their words. They didn't let hurt dictate their actions. They embraced stillness, because silence turns confusion into clarity. And here's the paradox. The quieter you become, the more the truth reveals itself. You no longer need to ask, do they care? Their actions show you. You no longer beg for clarity. The truth comes out in your stillness. Silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It isn't retreat. It's alignment. Because the answers you've been searching for out there have always been waiting for you in here. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: closure is not something they give you. It's something you give yourself. We all crave it. That one honest conversation, that apology that makes sense of the pain, that final explanation that feels complete. And so we wait. We send the last message. We beg for answers. We tell ourselves that if they just respond, if they just hear us out, we'll finally have peace. But here's the brutal truth. If they truly cared, you wouldn't have to beg for closure. They would give it freely, out of respect. And if they don't, your silence is the closure. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And the same is true with closure. Don't chase it, live it. Because the moment you go silent and walk away, you've already closed the chapter. You've told yourself, my peace doesn't depend on your explanation. Think about the cycle most people get trapped in. They hurt you. You demand answers. They avoid, deflect, or dismiss. You feel even worse, and the cycle repeats. You end up explaining your heart to someone who already made peace with hurting you. You end up hoping for understanding from someone who chose not to see you clearly in the first place. That's not healing. That's self-abandonment. Real closure looks different. Real closure is the moment you accept that what they gave was the most they were capable of giving. Real closure is understanding that no amount of words will make them more honest, more loving, or more respectful. You stop waiting for the conversation that will never happen. You stop writing the unsent messages in your head. You stop rehearsing explanations for someone who doesn't deserve them. And in that silence, your power returns. Because closure isn't about them. It never was. It's about you choosing yourself without needing their permission. Words can be beautiful. Words can heal. But words can also lie. People say what sounds right. They say what they think you want to hear. They use apologies, excuses, promises, sometimes just to buy more of your energy. But silence doesn't lie. Silence exposes. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." And that's the power of silence. When you stop explaining yourself, you give people the space to reveal who they really are. And trust me, they will. The one who truly respects you will notice your absence and reach out with honesty. The one who only used you will vanish because they never valued you to begin with. And the one who manipulated you, they'll grow angry or confused, not because you hurt them, but because they lost control over you. This is why silence is not passive. It's observant. It lets you step back and watch, without the fog of words clouding your judgment. Most people cling to words because words create illusions. They believe the apology instead of watching the pattern. They believe the promise instead of observing the actions. But the Stoics knew better. They didn't judge people by what they said. They judged them by what they did, consistently. When you go silent, masks fall off. You see who checks in when you stop giving. You see who disappears when your energy isn't convenient. You see who gets frustrated when they can't provoke a reaction out of you. That's the truth. And yes, sometimes it hurts more than any argument. But it's necessary. Because people can dismiss your words, but they cannot dismiss your absence. Silence strips away illusions. It forces you to stop believing promises and start believing patterns. It shifts your focus from their explanations to their energy. And in that clarity, you finally see the reality that words were trying to cover. Silence isn't just strength, it's vision. When someone misunderstands you, it stings. Your instinct is to defend yourself, to say, "That's not me. You've got it wrong." To explain why you are not the person they think you are. But here's the truth. Explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds is not confidence. It's fear of being misjudged. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit." Think about that. Every moment you spend convincing others of your worth is a moment stolen from living it. The person who does not explain himself is not arrogant. He is free from the weight of other people's opinions, free from the endless need to be understood by those who don't want to understand. This doesn't mean you'll be celebrated. In fact, you'll be misunderstood more often. You'll be called cold. You'll be labeled selfish. Some people will walk away because your silence breaks their illusion of control. But losing people who never truly saw you is not a loss. It's alignment. When you stop explaining, you shift from needing approval to embodying confidence. Your energy speaks for you. Your actions prove your intent. Your life becomes the explanation, silent, steady, undeniable. This kind of confidence is rare. It unsettles manipulators. It frustrates those who feed on your reactions. but it draws respect from the few who truly matter. Because in a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, the one who can stand in silence is unforgettable. Confidence is not shouting your value. It's knowing your value so deeply that silence becomes enough. There is something uniquely powerful about the person who chooses to walk away, not in anger, not in drama, but in silence. No final argument, no emotional farewell, no last attempt to be understood, just quiet detachment. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And nothing proves this more than silence. Because when you stop responding, the other person is left alone with their imagination, with their guilt, with the memory of how you treated them, and the echo of your absence. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is saying, "I no longer need to prove myself to you. My peace matters more than this connection." Most people don't know how to handle that kind of strength. They expect the argument. They expect you to fight, to plead, to stay. They expect the noise. But when you choose silence, you shatter the script they wrote for you. And in that moment, the lesson begins. Because people don't learn from being told, "Respect me." They learn when your absence forces them to feel what disrespect cost them. They don't change when you beg. They only reflect, if ever, when your silence leaves them with nothing to hold on to. But here's the key. The lesson isn't really for them. It's for you. You learn that your peace doesn't need permission. You learn that not everyone deserves an explanation. You learn that silence isn't just strength, it's healing. To detach in silence is not to stop caring. It is to care too deeply for your own soul to let it remain where it is not valued. And that kind of silence? That's real power. It terrifies those who thought they had control over you. But more importantly, it frees you. So now you know. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. Silence is dignity. Silence is power. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your energy. When you stop begging, you protect your worth. When you stop explaining, you preserve your peace. This is the way of the Stoic. Not coldness, but clarity. Not detachment from love, but detachment from chaos. And every time you choose silence over reaction, every time you walk away instead of explaining, every time you let your dignity speak louder than your words, you grow stronger. You build a kind of power that no one can take from you. Because your silence may not win the argument, but it will win yourself back. So let this be your reminder. You don't need to prove yourself to be worthy. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to break your peace just to make others comfortable. Your silence is enough. Let it be your shield. Let it be your lesson. Let it be your final word. Not out of ego, not out of spite, but out of unshakable self-respect. Say it with me now. My silence is my last word, and it is my most powerful one.